Welcome, everybody. Another geopolitical analysis video. Today, I have the pleasure of having Tom Luongo. He is the author of Gold, Goats, and Guns newsletter. He has a website. You can find him on Patreon, essentially, mostly there. You've been doing this for a while, Tom. We said offline that there's going to be a conversation. We have a lot of things to dissect here. And I wanted to ask you, given what we're hearing, it's the 7th day today of the Iranian conflict, seeing old legacy networks being dismantled, attacked. What are you seeing today so far? I mean, there's been a lot of chaos in the markets. Oil's been shooting up. What are you seeing so far?
What I'm seeing this morning, this is we're doing this from Friday, March 6th, and thank you for the invite. Great to be here. Great to do the thing. Right. And so we'll do the thing. I'm seeing this morning, you know, I've only been up about an hour and a half or something like that. I went to bed late last night watching old Super Bowl highlights. For some reason, I haven't watched a Super Bowl highlight in like 15 years, but somehow I wanted to reminisce about being a Giant fan in a former life. So if I'm a little, it's only because I'm not fully caffeinated yet. But watching the things that I've been watching all week, as London has started to crash out after Trump decided to say, oh, by the way, we're going to take your insurance markets from you too. By the way, we're taking the Forex markets away from you through crypto. We're taking the pricing of the US dollars away from you with SOFR. Oh, I've had my Treasury Secretary running an operation of gold and silver pricing for the last year or so. Now we're coming after oil pricing with an attack on Iran. And we're going to take away your ability to price oil and enforce oil volatility through City of London shipping insurance companies like Lloyd's of London and others, which are really, at the end of the day, nothing more than cutouts of MI6, as we've always found out. Because the minute we cut them off from Five Eyes, intelligence sharing, Lloyd's is like, oh, it's too dangerous for us to make any prognostications about what's going to happen in the markets. Like, insurance is the dumbest industry in the world. It's the simplest industry in the world. You look at an actuarial table and you add 3%. It's not your risk profile. It's not that tough, right? I have a very good friend who's not a public figure, who's one of the best insurance risk and analyzers in the world, risk projectors in the world. Okay, period. Okay, he's one of my former gaming buddies, and I know that I have no class. I have no game relative to him. He would show up to the gaming table, just like kind of randomly make moves because he didn't want to like demoralize everyone. Okay. Right. If you're a board gamer, this is a guy that can beat you in an 18xx game by $1. In a game to $14,000, my friend can beat you by $1, and he knew 3 turns ago that he was going to beat you by $1. And 18xx games are stock trading, classic stock trading, train economic route building games. Brilliant guy, and I can tell you flat out that the insurance industry in general is not very difficult. And what matters is how good your risk assessors are. Lloyd's of London has been running around the world, insuring everything for 350 years. Why this particular guy doesn't work for Lloyd's when he's better than everybody else in the industry by an order of magnitude should tell you that they never actually ever did any risk assessment whatsoever. Colonel Tanner Watkins had a great post on Twitter the other day about this very thing. She's like, they don't have to. They've got MI6 around the corner. They call up MI6. They find out what MI6 is going to do next, right? And then they assess risk appropriately. That's their job. And I say all that as preface to what I'm saying, which your original question, because now I'm going to get back to the original question, of course, which is that I'm watching the markets, and it's clear that they're doing shaping operations on the markets. So they blow out the price of oil because they have, in the Brent crude in particular, because they have control over the Brent crude contract. It's trading over $90 a barrel this morning. That's cute. Is it sustainable? I don't know. I just saw a note that the Israelis said that they're starting commercial air traffic on Sunday. So if the commercial airliners in Israel are telling the world that they're restarting commercial air traffic on Sunday, I don't think anybody should be worried about Iran's ability to shut the Strait of Hormuz or wipe Israel off the planet. But I can tell you that Iranian propaganda has been hot and heavy all over the news.
Well, this is what I want to get into. And you know, I asked you and mentioning the old legacy networks being dismantled. I'm in shock because going back to 2013, 2014, that's when I really had direct access to those parts of the world. Like I was there for a year serving. I was part of the IRTC contingency in order to provide Safeway for a lot of commercial tankers and cargoes. So there are a lot of private companies who were hiring back then special operations soldiers or paramilitary troops, people who had other experience in war or training, to be manned on the ships. And let me tell you, because I've been to those parts of the world, and I just want to say, because I'm seeing a lot of sympathy coming from Western side of the world, sure, mainstream media, but I'm seeing a lot of posts talking about the IRGC as just revolutionaries, freedom fighters, pushing back on the Israeli-US hegemony. Let me tell everybody, because I was there, the Somali and Yemen pirates have received drugs, weapons from the IRGC. Okay, they've been trained to conduct these piracy attacks. And when we were there, the Iranian Navy warships were always following us, especially in the Strait of Hormuz. And the reason why they were following us is because they wanted to know which ships had personnel, like had special ops or had intelligence, soldiers, maritime guards, and which ones didn't. And those that didn't have were sent coordinates to the boats, to the skiffs, to all of the pirates in the region to attack. Okay,
right.
So, you know, IRGC has been this huge network that has spread out in the Gulf of Africa, in the Horn of Africa, and we've seen training going on and weapon smuggling, drugs in that part of the world. So when people portray IRGC as just pushing back on Zionism or American hegemony, it just shows you that they're not really aware of what's going on in that part of the world.
Or this is the dangerous part. A lot of average people, they don't have any idea what's going on, so they're very, very susceptible to a narrative and to intelligence agency slop that gets promulgated across all forms of quote unquote alternative media. And if you go back to the alternative media space of 2013 through 2015, 2016, this is when I tell you, this is when I began to become something, tried to level up and understand what was going on in the world, because I had just gotten hired by Newsmax the first time, and trying to do a gold newsletter or a gold and commodities newsletter and not understand the geopolitics of the Middle East and Russia and this and everything. It was just dumb. I mean, I put Gazprom in the portfolio. Like, one of the first things I ever did was put Gazprom in the portfolio. And then, of course, now you got to track all of the geopolitical conflicts that Russia is involved in if you're going to make a call and put people's money into a stock like Gazprom, right? Makes sense, So this is what happened to me. And so it becomes very easy when you're in that information space, trying to assimilate as much of that information as humanly possible, get a perspective on it, and libertarian, and I'm a libertarian here, so I never liked the American hegemony. I never really understood London's role in it, and because I'm a dumb American, I'm being critical of my government because my government's acting like a bunch of idiots, or as I like to say, Rambo without a jockstrap, right? And so it's a natural progression from that to, oh, well, then the Russians are the good guys in this fight, and the Iranians have a point, and why shouldn't they have a nuclear weapon? I used to believe all this stuff. You go back and read stuff that I wrote, even on Twitter back, 10, 12 years ago, you'll see all of that.
Yeah,
I copped to it openly. In the early years of the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns blog, I talked about it. My partner Dexter Wright used to grit his teeth all the time. Why? Because he had a much deeper historical perspective on this, because he's been politically aware since he came out the chute. Okay, and that's who he is. And I come to this much later in life as a And so, over the course of I don't, I start to grow a political brain until I'm in my mid-30s. I'm going to be honest with you, right? I lived in my own little headspace playing games and reading comic books and reading dystopian science fiction and working as a chemist. And that was my former life.
Yeah.
Now, that all wound up training me for understanding how to level up quickly into the gig I do now.
Yeah.
But understand that's the timeline. So I understand why people are susceptible to this.
Yeah.
I was susceptible to it.
Yeah.
But the longer you go and you watch the process, and the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, and you start to fill in the historical perspective on things, and you're going to crash out, and you're going to over blame the Jews here, you're going to over blame the Brits there, you're going to over blame the Russians there, you're going to over blame the Iranians there. But what you're doing is you're trying to get a good understanding of history. And so the best thing to do is talk to as many people as possible. Absolutely. And begin disbelieving when someone's constantly trying to body swerve you away from a particular area of the analysis.
Yeah. Well,
and Britain's always that. And Britain's always that group. Okay.
Yeah.
And they blame the Jews and say the Jews are trying to stop that, which is not true. I mean, it's somewhat true. The Jews are, the Jews are their own worst enemy. When it comes to this stuff. Absolutely. So, but when you do the analysis in the long run and you stop for 5 seconds and you say, well, the Russians are good at propaganda and the Americans are good at propaganda and the British are good at propaganda, and the Israelis are good at propaganda, maybe the Iranians are good at propaganda.
Absolutely. And this is very interesting because we're, like I said, on the 7th day of the war, and we've been hearing that the U.S. is going to run out of ammunitions. You have ex-generals coming out. I don't want to name them, but they're coming out saying, oh, we're going to run out of this. Iran has aces up their sleeves. Well, what we've seen so far is immobilization of the Azeris on the border, which is a very, very interesting aspect of the piece.
I just so you know, the day the war, like the day after the war started, so watch these areas very carefully. What Alayab does will determine whose side he's actually on, because for years he's been a London asset. But if he's moving on the IRGC,
that's gonna be huge. That's gonna be huge.
That means that Trump got to it.
And you
have, like he got to Qatar, just like he got to Qatar, just like he got to the Saudis, just like he got to everybody else.
Yep.
The last one to check on this one is Erdogan. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's where I want to lead to, because my Greek heritage has something to say about it. I love the fact that the Kurds have also been mobilized by the border. Something that we're missing here, if we zoom out for a second, Iran is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and unfortunately, it has been plagued by this eschatological prophecy of the Mahdi coming in. That is also part of some of the Sunni extremism that we've seen Turkey.
Sure.
That believe some of that. And, people have been perceiving that, the Sunnis and the Shiites, they hate each other, and etc. To an extent, although that's true, but we know that there are Islamist factions that are working together, and they're putting aside their differences of being Shiites, Sunnis, etc. And one thing I want to touch on is that we saw in Saudi Arabia one of the best air defense systems. And I told you offline, I have some intel, boots on the ground, knowing that since 2020, Greece was setting up air defense systems using the Patriot systems there to protect Aramco against who? The Houthis, right? Which we know, one of the proxies of Iran. And since then, Israeli air defense has come in, and they've actually, I have crazy numbers here, 2 days ago, because people are saying that Iran is attacking all the Gulf countries. The Gulf countries are naked, they're susceptible, Iran is going to do this, Iran's going to do that. Well, let me tell you, just give people perspective. 2 days ago, there were numbers that the UAE air defenses had spotted 941 UAVs, intercepted 876 of them. The only impact was 65 in the territory. That really didn't have much damage because people have been prepared. And although there were videos that surfaced, it's very reasonable for tourists, for locals, to be surprised. But we know that a lot of this was just ricocheted parts of drones, of missiles, but the attacks haven't really caused a lot of damage. Now, we know cruise missiles, 8 of them at that time, 8 of them were intercepted, which is huge.
Yes.
Okay. And then we had ballistic missiles. 90% of the ballistic missiles that was shot onto UAE territory, okay, were 90% of them intercepted. 13 were impacted in the sea and 1 impacted within state territory. So the overall defense system of some of these Gulf states has been over 90% in terms of accuracy. And I can tell you, knowing from what's going on from people who I've worked with, who I've known for some time, this has been a preparation going on since 2020, even before COVID, because Iran had spread out so much, and there was intel, and we know back in the 80s, it was the Iran-Israeli Contra affair, so we shouldn't be surprised that Mossad has had some of their own assets within the IRGC.
Yes.
And we saw the beheading of the IRGC from Soleimani, right? Back in, I think it was actually January
2020. Right? Yeah, no, that's actually, I think I've always obliquely always thought of the Soleimani killing as part of the COVID timeline.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, same thing with, the way oil prices were being screwed around with. We had the SOFR blowout in September of 2019. 6 months later, we're going to get we were due for a financial crisis. Lo and behold, we get COVID. Then, Putin says no, and the price of oil gets halved by, over a weekend. We wake up with, $40 or $40 barrel oil, which was the worst overreaction I've ever seen in a financial market to anything ever. A literal 1% change in the potential oil output of OPEC over 5 years halved the price of oil overnight. No, what happened was somebody ran a massive operation to blow out Donald Trump's presidency. That's what that was, and they used COVID and everything else, and it was a London attack, folks. And in the end, this was just London trying to blow up the world. And then they gave us COVID lockdowns 2 week later, and then dogs and cats living together, and the Canadians went crazy, and now they passed assisted suicide, and all of it. I mean, everything you can imagine all happened in that period. People crashing out left and right, and I'm like, okay, I told you that this was something like this was going to happen. They used COVID as the cover story for that, which was already in process, which was the meltdown in the bond markets. Oh, by the way, European bond markets are melting down this morning because now the United States is refusing to play the game. And now the United States is doing the financial work along with kinetic work to then attack London from every vector and every dimension imaginable. We're drone swarming them financially, and they're striking back this morning, which is what I was saying in the first segment, right? My first response, not just in the oil markets, but they're attacking the SOFR strip. For those of you who don't know what that means, go look at the 3-month SOFR futures contract on the COMEX. The strip is the 6 month money, 6 months to 3 years out. Look at the outsized volume and move in the market relative to a kind of weak jobs report. It should be the exact opposite. The weak jobs report should tell you that the Fed's going to cut rates, not raise rates. And they're selling the crap out of the SOFR strip. They're trying to induce panic and write a headline. I say this all the time. So you have to realize that that's part of what's on the game board. It's not 5D chess, folks. It's just MI6 all the way fucking down, all day, every day. And our CIA is, and rogue factions of the Mossad, and they're all in on it together. But the reality is that their communications network is getting broken up the same way that we bombed the crap out of the Iranian communications network, which is why the response after day one, we'll get into this in a second, I have a feeling, has been so uncoordinated from Iran. It's been so spastic because they have no command and control. I mean, I think it's obvious they have no command and control.
Yeah.
What they have is a bunch of chest thumping IRGC guys, getting in front of microphones and allowing guys like Doug McGregor and Tucker Carlson to crash out in real time and prove to everybody that they were always on somebody else's payroll.
Well, the IRGC, we've seen one of the strongest factions being decapitated, right? And it's very interesting because Israel, from what we can judge from the outcome now, had a very key player. And I want to talk about this because since 2020, we've noticed there was a key player that goes by the name of Esmail Qaani. And he has always been present, and then somehow minutes after an attack, escape unharmed. And I want to talk about this because he was present in a meeting with the Hezbollah leader at the time, Nasrallah. We all know what happened to Nasrallah.
Right.
He was in a meeting with the political leader of Ismail Haniyeh, who he was a political leader of Hamas, we know, Iranian proxy, right? And although dozens of senior Iranian commanders have been killed, he always managed to escape. And he was recently part of a meeting with Khamenei, the Ayatollah, minutes before he was assassinated. So he's the man directly responsible for feeding a lot of intel in the midst of this war, and he's never been mentioned so far. He hasn't been mentioned as in the list of those who are the casualties or dead. So very interesting, and that's why dismantling this whole Iranian propaganda. Because we've heard that there are offshore companies in Dubai, that Iran is behind the derivatives market in the oil and natural gas, playing a few games there. And we're noticing that they've been utilizing components that were set up by who? By the European colonialists, the British and the French. And before the scepter to you, I just want to throw out there a fun fact. Back in 1857, a few days ago, March 5th, marked the second Opium War that took place between China, France, and the UK.
That's right.
Pass it on to you.
All I'm going to say is this is interesting. So as you're talking about this guy, I'm sorry, I didn't. His name immediately escapes me because I don't. But it's interesting. How can the IRGC have such bad, unprofessional security that this guy can show up at 3 different meetings, and give away the leadership positions? How can they be that obtuse?
Right.
How can they be that incompetent? When I see something that incompetent, I have to question. I'm only pushing back because it's my natural instinct here. I mean, I'm okay with the IRGC being incompetent, right? But I never want to assume incompetence because that's condescending towards your enemy. You never want to assume your enemy is an idiot, right? This is the biggest problem that the anti-Trump crowd has. They think he's vain and stupid, and I'm like, dude, he's running the table on you. You need to get over yourself. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, he was So Esmail Qaani, a very interesting figure. He's in his 60s now. He essentially took over what Soleimani left behind, which was one of the factions of the IRGC, because the IRGC have like 5 groups. Okay. That are running.
Would this be the faction of the IRGC? I'm asking you a simple question. That is basically in control of the axis of resistance strategy of Soleimani. Okay. We'll go with that.
And Soleimani was somebody who was praised because I admired him only as a figure, because he was very influential in setting traps to a lot of the ISIS terrorists, and he was able to push back on Turkey, because we know Turkey's relationship with ISIS, with Islamic terrorism, etc., etc. So after the assassination, that was a key figure who took over, and I believe that faction of the IRGC is called Quds.
The Quds Force. Yes, the Quds Force. You're correct. It's slipped my mind as well. You're correct.
Right. And I mean, since then we've also seen the attack on nuclear scientists different important figures of the IRGC. I mean, the IRGC has had several iterations since the 70s, the late 70s, right? It has gone from crazy to crazier to lunatic type. And, you know, people are not familiar with the Shiites. I've met a lot of people who used to be ex-Muslims, and the gruesome and primordial, primitive, pagan almost, eschatological prophecies that they have, and some of the things that they believe in, have really, you know, come out in the open. And the Sunnis definitely were expecting this. The Sunnis, all the Gulf states, not only were they prepared, but there was coordination, because Iran was the thorn in this whole stabilization of the region. I mean, we saw Trump create the peace board, which is quintessential to what's happening. And I want to take it to a little bit more of
okay. But before we go on, move on, I want to stay on this subject for a little bit, because this is important. Because it's rare I actually talk to somebody who knows a goddamn thing about Iran. Okay, I talk to a lot of people who think they know a lot of stuff about Iran. I think I know a lot. I know some stuff about Iran, but it's rare that I get to actually talk to somebody who's worked in that area. So I want to stay on this for a minute about Solomon. So what you're implying by everything you've put up here, which is fascinating, is that this guy Esmail Qaani.
Qaani, yeah.
Okay, Esmail Qaani takes over for Soleimani after Soleimani is killed as head of the Quds Force, and then starts betraying the rest of the IRGC.
Yep. Well, we've been seeing.
I mean, I mean, that's what is that what you're literally is that what you're positing?
Yes.
That the Quds Force became an anti-IRGC contingent within the IRGC.
Yes. What I'm saying is that although people have this perception that the IRGC is this homogenous group,
a monolith,
or like an army, a monolith. Perfect. You've been always describing how, you know, Iran is not a monolith. This is not a monolith thing that we're attacking.
Dig in deeper on the IRGC itself, and all the information is fractal, and we find out even more splintering. Fantastic. Thank you.
And you know, people who are second guessing this, well, there's no coincidence, because Iran has been cut off first from its proxies. What have we seen in the last few years? Hezbollah being decapitated, Hamas being decapitated. All right,
the Houthis basically being starved out for all intents and purposes. Now I'm going to add one to you. You touched on it earlier. The Somalis who were laundering all of the American money out of Minnesota with the Quality Clearing Center, USAID, all of it, every bit of it. Venezuela, Cuba. CNGC, CJNG in central Mexico. It's all tied to the same goddamn thing.
The network that has spread out, okay, in the West, can be obvious for those who have critical thinking. Why? Because we've been hearing in the news, and it's penetrated in the news, constant de-dollarization topics, right? The U.S. is crumbling, de-dollarization is happening. Then we hear a few months ago that Putin is willing to only be paid in U.S. dollars. One of the richest countries of the world of commodities is saying all of a sudden.
Yeah, but nobody wants, and he hasn't been able to internationalize the ruble. Why? Because he doesn't have a professional banking system. Because he's not been able to build, and now he's building a more professional banking system. I've talked to people within Russia and done some work on this, but the Russian banking system cannot get out of first gear without access to the U.S. capital markets, which is why Europe goaded him into war with Ukraine and then froze them out of the system, and why they did that. Why BRICS had to start the process of building a parallel system that no one wanted, no one needed, right? But they had to do it because they were being forced into it. Now Trump comes in and says, "No, we don't need to do that shit anymore. Let's do this ARC thing that I've been arguing for forever and a day now, and let's cut Europe out of the deal." Isn't that a better deal for humanity if we just get America, Russia, and China to stop pissing ammonia at each other and cut a deal and then wall Europe off like a John Carpenter movie? It makes more sense to me. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, I make it blunt and stupid, but when you reduce the game board that way for the uninitiated, all of a sudden they're all kind of go, why wouldn't Putin take that deal? It helps him to not be China's bitch. It helps the Americans. It helps the Japanese. It helps the Saudis. It helps everybody. It helps South America. It helps Africa. And everybody wins except Europe. And Europe can come along for the ride if they want to, but they choose not to. They choose war every time. The same way the IRGC chose war against the United States.
Well, what I find interesting, and you always talk about how the epicenter of this is the old colonial powers. You talk about the British. And if somebody just reads a few pages about Lord Palmerston, okay, he's responsible. I mean, he was the key figure of pushing these color revolutions, of coming up with these ideas. And where have we seen all these color revolutions and all these factions that are pushing in all the Commonwealth, the part of the Commonwealth, all those areas that
all those border countries where they had a Commonwealth nation, and then when they left, they created an anti-Commonwealth nation. So French, India, Pakistan, the United States, Canada, Syria, Sykes-Picot, right?
And a lot of people don't know, but even in Canada, we've seen this mindset back when I forget when it was, but there was propaganda that the Nazis had taken up a chunk of land of Canada. And they were doing that in order to mobilize the public, in order to accept the idea that we have to go and fight the Nazis. And who's behind that?
And notice that
Canada is a British asset. Who's behind that? It was the British and what they did.
And interestingly enough, the first time I went I went to Alberta. Sean Newman brought me and Alex up for an evening, and we chatted with we had dinner in front of 150 people and did a thing. Yeah. And it was the beginning of the war. Yeah. Northern Alberta has a lot of Ukrainians in it. Okay. So I had to be very careful. So during the break, Sean took me aside and said, I need to remind you, there's a lot of Ukrainians in the audience. So you want to temper your analysis in such a way that you're not talking about Ukrainian people. You're talking about what's going on at a high level. I'm like, fair. Thank you. I did not know this, but I'm bringing this up now because what do you think they did after World War II? They invited all of these Ukrainians, and I'm going to say there's going to be a large contingent of them, like Chrystia Freeland, that are all Banderites, and they wanted to preserve their freaking Banderite Nazi assets to be able to turn them up, to be able to turn the thing up later, and honest Ukrainians who still hate Russians because, well, they have every right to, right? And then, it's like Greeks and Turks. They have every right to hate, Greeks have every right to hate the Turks. Just like Ukrainians have every right to hate Russians. Just like Poles have every right to hate Russians. It doesn't matter. And they use that as a means by which to create what they need. So in Canada, putting a large contingent of Ukrainians in Canada post-World War II was a down payment on whatever they were going to do when they decided to get the United States involved in something, use it as a whip hand over the United States later on. They always lay these traps. They've been they lay these ethnic traps everywhere, and they use them on purpose. And so, no offense to the Ukrainians in the audience, but y'all have been used.
Yep, absolutely.
2 million of your boys are dead because the Russians only know how to do war one way. You chose this war, and we're going to give you that war. It's unbelievably sad.
Yeah, it's sad to see because I have direct family who are Ukrainians from my my wife's side, and I have had lengthy discussions with them, and you can see that the level of brainwashing that has taken place, and you see that it's obvious that they've been used after World War II to spread out certain type of propaganda against Russia. And that became very obvious to me, serving 2 years in the special forces and having some understanding of it, and how a lot of shadowy operations take place, covert things that happen where the public is not aware of. It's not a surprise that once the invasion of Russia happened, all of a sudden I started noticing Ukrainian flags everywhere. And I'm in Ontario. I'm in Ontario in Canada. So I was noticing.
You're in occupied territory. We need to liberate you.
Yeah,
We're coming. We're coming. We're coming.
I was one of the first to publicly say to a lot of people that I'm a proponent of that. Like, why does Canada exist? Why do we need a Canada and United States of America?
Yep.
It should be one thing, and we should kick out those who have been meddling with our politics for a long time, which is British and the French, but primarily the British, right?
What I would argue, and I mean this sincerely, like, New Yorkers and Floridians don't really have much in common, other than the fact that they both like warm weather when they're old. New Yorkers and Texans have almost nothing in common. People from Missouri and Washington have almost nothing in common. If you look at the United States, it's at least 14 subcultures. Yeah. You can drive down US 66 or I-65 or up and down I-65 or whatever, and you can go through, and every state you go into, there's a different barbecue.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like North Florida, where I hung my hat after I graduated high school, completely different place than South Florida. Okay, I had a patron who crashed out because he juice-burged out on me, but he used to joke that he's like, Tom, you don't live in North Florida, you live in South Georgia. Well, I'm like, yeah, and and it's the politics of that area of North Central Florida, completely north of Gainesville, completely different than Ocala, than Orlando, than Naples, y'all don't have any idea. What I'm getting at here is that you're absolutely correct. We can absorb Canada into that melange that is all of these different little subcultures, because they're all just variations on a theme. Like, New Brunswick and Maine why are they in separate countries, right? Yeah. Look at, why is Southern Toronto or Southern Ontario on the other side of the Peace Bridge from Buffalo? Like, why are those separate countries?
Mm-hmm. And that's what I talked about.
They're not separate cultures. They're the exact same culture. I know, because when the Buffalo Sabres suck, which is every year, all the Toronto fans come down to Buffalo to go catch the friggin' Leafs game, and that's how the Sabres, stay afloat, because they can charge whatever the hell they want for the damn tickets.
Right. Good point. Well, that's why I talked about old legacy networks in the intro being shooken up, because we're seeing this everywhere. We're seeing all the different, micro and macro, components of old legacy networks being shaken up. And what I found very interesting is the peace board that Trump set up, because I think this is going hand in hand with the theory that I have with the GCC, which is, for those who don't know, the Gulf Cooperation
Council.
And I believe that we're going to see greater peace in that part of the world that has been plagued with warfare and all these different factions that have been fighting for, God knows what. Some say ideologies, some say it's for the colonialist powers, some say it's for their own belief of being
religion and eschatology and all that
prophecies, etc. But I think that people should have been expecting this, and I think it's good that it's happening now in order to move on to a much more peaceful part of of human history. Because I do think that at some point Iran might be merging with the other Gulf states into the GCC, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see them join the peace board after we have proper governance of Iran and the IRGC and all these extremists being eliminated. Now, we touched on different things, but I want to talk a little bit about Cyprus and Greece, and I want to talk about the Mediterranean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Well, just a couple of things, and I before we end, just to make sure that we do this, I want you to go into better, deeper detail, especially being Greek, about this insane eschatology thing that everybody is lopping onto, that's trying to layer onto this fight, because I know there's a lot of people within my circle that believe in this stuff, and in a way that I don't. I've been exposed to it, and I'm like, sounds cute, and I'm like, then I'm looking at it going, yeah, this is a more cynical bullshit from this is more cynical Iranian propaganda that I'm literally, that's what I think of 90% of it at this point. I think like the Muslim propaganda, I cannot stomach anymore. So let's do Cyprus and Greece because I know it's important. I think it's hugely important. But I also just want to make sure that we touch on those two topics because that would be and I'm free to just shut the fuck up and listen. I mean, sincerely. So go for it.
Well, it all starts with Kemal Ataturk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the genocide that took place, which the Soviets also fueled. They sent a lot of ammunitions. Lavrov, recently minister of Russia, discussed this in an interview, how the Soviets had helped the Turks back then in order to be formed. So the eschatology goes back to several saints who have said that, one morning you'll be sipping your coffee and you'll hear that the Persian nuclear facilities will be bombed. And this was decades ago. I can link the details below because there's a specific saint who's a very important figure for the Orthodox. He was a monk who shared this. And in general, we know that the church, after the fall of Constantinople, and this is what people are surprised at, when you have, because the Byzantine Empire was one of the longest standing empires in the world, we don't hear it too much in the West because of the schism, the chasm that happened between the Orthodox and the Catholics. But, this is just a part of it has some merit in terms of the prophecies and the eschatological aspect to it. But what we know is that Turkey is a rogue state. It was deprived before, when the Ottomans took over that region of Anatolia. Mostly the people who lived there were Greeks, Armenians, and then you had a faction part of Assyrians and Kurds, etc., Alawites as well. So Turkey is a country that was set up by the British with the help of the Soviet Union at the time, with the help of the French as well. And the reason why is because they were in control of important sea trades before that, which was the previous iteration, which was the Ottomans, right? So they set up Turkey because Turkey was essentially their puppet state. And we see this. Cyprus, for instance, the reason why the British did not react to Cyprus is not because they're numb from the years of Tony Blair and they saw the ramifications of the Iraq war, etc., and they didn't want, no. It's because they allowed Turkey to come into that island, and at the same time, they've been playing both sides. They've been playing the Greeks, they've been playing the Turks. So I was very interested in seeing Greece's reaction because Greece has one of the most powerful militaries. Not Europe. It's not just the numbers, and people need to understand. Greece has more. Let's talk about this. Every island of Greece operates as like one of those, those ships. I forget now. The name is escaping. Where the aircrafts land.
Aircraft carrier.
Aircraft carrier. Every island operates as an aircraft carrier. Right. That's why Greece doesn't need any. And since the dawn of time, the Greco-Persian War that took place, we saw that Greece didn't need large navy. They had smaller navy because they were able to move in the waters of the Aegean Sea. That's a little bit of a historical, tactical point there. But what people need to understand is essentially Turkey is next. Yes. And I'm saying this because, we're not beyond the prophecies and the religious, eschatological, all that. But, Turkey is going to be next. Regime change, call it what you will, dismantling of
it has to happen. Yeah,
it has to happen.
It's part of the process. Well, the Greece's response to the Iranian spastic flailing to move 2 frigates onto Cyprus.
Yeah,
I want unpack that for me. Because all I heard from there was that British bankers were leaving like in droves, like they've been caught with pictures of him, Epstein, and a 13-year-old. Like that's what I saw.
What people need to know is that the British intelligence has been operating in Cyprus and has been thwarting, any efforts of Greece coming into the island, having any presence. So this was a historical moment because 2,500 years ago, the name Kimon, which was it's one of the best frigates right now in the world, regarded as one of the best the French built that, and Greece has newly acquired that into its navy. The name Kimon, he was a general who was famous for his campaigns against the Persians. And after 2,500 years ago, he was present and responsible for freeing Cyprus from the Persians. And now we see this again coming into a different form as a name, and that's why the name was chosen. So,
I love Greeks. You guys, you let nothing go. Like, it's hilarious. You guys are hilarious. I mean that, and I mean that with all respect and love. Dude, seriously, y'all are just
and that's why it was so they were praised because the Cypriots saw this as such a symbolic act, right? And the name of the frigate, but also the action. Because let's not forget, the Spanish didn't want to help the U.S. And then when Trump said, "Hey, you know what? You don't allow us to work,
no trade for you." Like, that's it.
Yeah. So it's been very interesting, but the reflexes indicate that this is a changing of the old guard, and something new is brewing. And we've known the strategic alliance of Israel and Greece in the region, and Turkey knows internally. There have been discussions. They know that they're next. Okay, and
I think it's very obvious.
And this is and
this is to remind everybody as well, like, that we've been arming the crap out of the Italians, and when I noted this immediately, I'm sure you heard me say this about the minute Trump came back into power, he started moving NATO assets out of Poland and out of Germany and into Greece. So I looked at, and I took one look at, and back into Italy as well. And I took one look at that, and I went, "Oh, we're just going to take control of the northern coast of the Mediterranean." That's why Starmer then turns around and hands Gibraltar back to Spain, because then they wanted to be able to use Spain as a pressure point on the United States. Isn't it interesting that Spain tried to say you don't get to refuel your ships and your planes and at Gibraltar anymore, and Trump then turns around in the wake of the SCOTUS decision against emergency use of tariffs? No, you have to use the other things. And he's like, that's going to be worse for everyone. And then he turns right around. He doesn't even doesn't use tariff, doesn't say that. He says, nope, done, trade embargo.
Yep. Done. And there you go. You see the next day.
They're done. And then the Spanish were like,
of course. I believe the new government,
they list back into the corner, and then did their thing. Okay.
I think that Spain has joined, although Spain and the Brits have a history there with Gibraltar. The newer government, the establishment of Spain right now, I believe, is in cahoots with the British, and I think it's evident by seeing their reaction. Love the mug, Davos.
They're Davos completely.
And we're seeing this because there are a lot of moving parts, and I hope people are taking notes here, because you do have that aspect of the Richard von Kalergi literature, who was also awarded by one of the late diplomats who passed away from the U.S. Forgetting his name right now. He was responsible for the Cyprus intervention of Turkey. A few years passed away. His name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, talking Kissinger.
One of the biggest, Kissinger. There we go,
okay.
Kissinger. He awarded Richard von Kalergi, who was this intelligentsia. He was groomed as this academic figure who was influencing foreign politics, and he discussed about the Islamist takeover of Europe and the West. Okay, so now when you're seeing that the British have openly been supporting this, King Charles has openly praised Islam. Okay, no wonder the anti-Zionist, the anti-Jewish, I should say, propaganda, right, is coming pushed from there. You have Spain that is all of a sudden promoting millions and millions coming into Spain when Europe has been plagued with this problem since 2010, 2009.
Or going back to the Crusades,
going back. And Turkey is responsible for pushing those illegal refugees, for pushing all these migrants who are mostly men, and coming from young age, working, able to fight, etc. You're not seeing any women or children. It's mostly men. So I think that these are going to be the next frontiers, the next areas where we're going to see a lot of conflict. Now with Turkey, Greece, I just want to set out the numbers for those who don't know. When I'm saying that Greece has one of the most powerful militaries out there, I'm saying this because in Europe, comprised of Europe, Europe has about 60 ready fighter aircrafts that are ready right now. Greece has 230 that are ready right now, to start any type of operation. The artillery,
and it's all America's best, by the way. It's not the shitty export stuff that we sell to other people. We're giving Greece the best stuff outside of anything that the Israelis have upgraded on their own. Like, Israeli avionics, like the Jews, hate the Jews, doesn't freaking matter. The Israelis are good at what they do and taking American technology and making it better, which is one of the reasons why we are willing to quote unquote subsidize Israel with foreign aid, because we know we're going to get that money back tenfold in the form of them improving our equipment. This is real. This is practical. This has nothing to do with eschatology. It has nothing to do with APAC. It has nothing to do with any of that politicized and political bullshit. That stuff's real as well, but it's a different angle on this. It's not a monolith, folks. Sometimes it's just, hey, your R&D department, here's $4 billion a year. Go have fun with it.
Well, just to put things into perspective,
please don't kill women and children with it. Use it to upgrade the avionics, you mother. Come on, guys.
Well, just to put this into perspective, Greece has main battle tanks anywhere between 13 to 1,400 that are ready. Europe as a whole has 200.
I know. Like, no.
Why is this?
The Greeks, pound for pound, on a per capita basis, they're the most militarized people in the world.
Yeah.
So 11 million people with these numbers. Think about this for a second.
Yeah. So Turkey is next. I predict that Erdogan right now, he knows this. He knows this. I predict that we're going to see a lot of tension in the Aegean Sea. And there's going to be a lot of tension in the Mediterranean. Surprisingly, so I've been on flight radar systems trying to figure out what is the activity of Turkey. Turkey so far, although it's been talking a lot, hasn't been done anything in the region because they're frozen. They're like, what do we do? Do we attack Iran? We can't do that. We want the IRTC.
They're already stuck in a quagmire in Syria.
Yes.
Syria was a trap that was set for them by the Russians and the Americans.
Yeah.
Now we're leaving, right? So there's no tripwire troops to false flag us into a ground war in Syria. We left Al Tanf and we left east of the Euphrates River. Erdogan's got a problem with the Kurds. As you pointed out, the Azeris are mounting on the border. The Kurds I think everybody's just trying to hold Iran in place, because if the IRGC decides to do something stupid, I don't actually think that the IRGC that's left, I don't think they're trying to do anything stupid like that. I honestly think that these are mechanisms by which what you're worried about now is local warlordism. That as the IRGC splinters into local regional factions, that you're going to have colonels or, majors or whatever, the equivalent thereof, now try and take, get a battalion of guys and take over an entire region and declare themselves, governor of that region over the native populations and start slaughtering people. That's the more likely outcome across all of Iran. At this point, that's the thing I'm actually worried about more than anything. Because command and control is gone. Because it's clear that there ain't dudes sitting on the Strait of Hormuz with missile launchers ready to knock ships out of the water. Those guys never existed. And if they did exist, after we knocked out all of the generals and the command and control, those guys are sitting there going, you know what? I have a family too. I'm not getting vaporized for these people.
There we go. And the one thing, and I've noticed the last 2 days there have been some reports that Iran is preparing for the aspect of civil war, because what people need to understand is that everybody talks about World War III, etc., and we compare with World War II, etc. I think this is maintain chaos, but what we will see is a more hybrid war on steroids, which has been going on the last few years, But I think that the Iran right now is expecting civil war, is expecting different factions to start fighting, because there are a lot of people, and it's sad, but we have been led to believe that anything that comes out of Iran in terms of the protests being squashed and people being killed is propaganda. The people have been suffering there, and a lot of them who are willing to fight off this regime are huge in numbers. And one thing I think that we will see is exactly that, is seeing slowly the Iranian regime being taken out from the inside, right? Because once you take out the military, what is left, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like I was talking with I haven't published the podcast yet, so we're doing this on Friday, on March 6th. And I recorded a podcast with Blaine Holt yesterday for my channel. And Blaine brought up the very important point that the whole idea of Iran being a monolith is just idiotic. The reality is that this is where people's cognitive dissonance, and the British and the old colonials, they use this cognitive dissonance on purpose, which is to say the Ayatollah Khamenei and the clerics couldn't, and their representatives were not allowed to negotiate in good faith. When you see a country or you see a group negotiate against their own best interest, the tracksuit midget Zelensky in Ukraine, for example, the best example I've got for you, right? He's not an independent actor.
Yeah,
he is a puppet of somebody else, right? And or he's being threatened openly by a thug faction, and that's clearly what's going on with Zelensky in many ways, and everybody is beating on him. You can make the same argument for Khamenei and the rest of the clerics. This is how you can get to the state of believing that they issued the fatwa against nuclear weapons, and yet the IRGC was still pursuing one at the same time. You can't use the fatwa against nuclear weapons as an argument for why Iran is justified, or Trump's attacks on Iran are not justified. That's the British bullshit play, because the mullahs, for lack of a better, the clerics, were never allowed to negotiate in good faith because they had a gun to their head. So it may have been, if you want to have the generous read of Khamenei and the clerics, and I'm not asking you to. I'm not saying I even have a generous read. I'm saying if you want to pursue this as the most generous read imaginable and believe that the fatwa against nuclear weapons that was issued is real. And again, that's salt to taste, folks. That's your mileage may vary. You do what you want with that. If you believe that, then you can also believe that their representatives could never go into the meeting with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and negotiate honestly. They weren't the representatives, but they were being blamed for it by the typical by the British neocons, the John Boltons and the Victoria Nulands and all of those, in order to try and pressure Trump into having a plan for a post-cleric Iran, which is the one they want, which is the reestablishment of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Let's bring in Reza Pahlavi, who is our guy to run the country, and nothing changes. And we go back to 1950, and we go back to the Shah. Like, what are you kidding me? He was also a British puppet. Yeah. So understand that what the IRGC did in negotiating the way they did was your tell that this is your biggest tell. They were a City of London asset, because City of London is forcing them to negotiate exactly the same way that you're seeing Zelensky negotiate. And you saw for years Maduro to try to negotiate with the United States. And Maduro is your object lesson. And what happens when Trump finally is able to get through to him? I can protect you. I can protect your family. And we found out, remember, when we exfiltrated Maduro and killed something, I've heard anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people, basically what Ian Burlingame will call the Praetorian Guard in Venezuela, the Cubans and the Colombians and everybody else that were down there running the operations with Maduro as the figurehead, right? Once Maduro, what did we hear from the United States? Oh, we didn't just get Maduro out. We got his wife out. We got his family out, right? Maduro's doing the thumbs up thing in the back of the freaking paddy wagon as they parade him around Manhattan, for fuck's sake, right? That was never an option for Khamenei.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe that he's shaved his beard and living in a Moscow apartment next to Bashar al-Assad. I believe he's dead.
Yeah,
and I don't even know that we killed him, because under that framework, the people who would kill Khamenei at this point would be the IRGC and those parts of Israel that are still loyal to London would then put that out there and force Trump to swallow it. I literally just constructed that in real time, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or we just said, you know what, it's simpler than that, and it's just no. The fatwa was never real. They were lying through their teeth. They were freaking crazy. They were freaking crazy mullahs. Mark Levin was right about something for the first time in his fucking life, and we should all rejoice that he's dead. Yeah. You can believe either one. I gave you the generous read, and I gave you the ungenerous read.
Yeah. Well, it's so multifaceted and multi-layered, and that's why, again, Iran is not a monolith, because I saw Alex Krainer's reaction and your discussion with him, and I know that there are a lot of things that can point to one direction. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking at the outcome. The outcome suggests that the mafia factions, the components who were part of that old colonialist legacy network that were super prolific in the financial aspect too, because there were offshore companies in Dubai and elsewhere doing things that the British had set up with their commodity proxies and the derivatives, et cetera. So I do think that this was just, a move in order to take out this part that is creating major destabilization in the region, and that we're going to move into this broader aspect of development, where the GCC and the peace board,
peace and all of that, and the Russians are going to guarantee all of this from the Central Asian side, because they want the international north-south transport corridor, and they've never been happy with having a crazy freaking regime like the Iranians in Tehran. The Russians never liked any of this, folks. This is the funny part about it, that everybody needs to stop crashing out about. Jesus Christ, what the hell is this freaking camera doing? I've always said that Putin doesn't care who's in charge in Iran as long as it's stable and as long as they're willing to act like normal people, and Russian trade can get around the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. That's all he cares about. He wants the Trans-Caspian corridor. So watch Armenia, because if now I'm just thinking about out loud now. If Aliyev in Azerbaijan has been effectively flipped and realizes that at this point any promise made to him by the Brits is null and void, Nikol Pashinyan in Armenia, that Soros rat fuck son of a bitch. That guy's the most nervous guy in Central Asia right now.
Yeah.
Because Putin can send the Spetsnaz in and just have his ass taken out, and Putin would do that in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And the Armenian people would cheer.
I think we're going to see a lot of things happen. This is, I know, because we're running out of time, but I wanted to touch on the aspect a little bit more with Turkey and Russia. But then again, is the present moment our focus? But hey, is there anything? Because I know you're pressed for time. Is there anything you wanna say before we go? Anything you want to touch on?
Well, no, I mean we can do another 15-20 minutes. I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Okay.
Because I got plenty of time.
Okay.
So I want to touch on this eschatology thing, because this is one of the things that I believe, having had multiple conversations with Alex Krainer about these things, and I hate disagreeing with Alex in public, and I just do. I love the man.
I love that contingency of you and Alex and the rest.
Alex is wonderful. I mean, I've spent. Alex's humanity is what sometimes sadly betrays him, and that's to his credit as a human being, folks. Seriously. So but this Muslim eschatology thing
Yeah.
is a real problem, because it's all over a lot of the anti-American, pro-Iranian perspective that has subsumed people into believing that, oh my, no, Iran's the good guy. And I remember having to walk Larry Johnson off that ledge in a private phone call the night Israel attacked Tehran last June. I'm like, dude, so lay off the whiskey. No, Iran is not the good guy. There are no good guys here. Israel sucks. The Iranians suck. They all work for fucking London, and we're gonna watch this play out. And let's watch to see how this plays out before you pass judgment. And too many people have, I think, with the best of intentions, and I mean this when I call Larry, and I'll talk to him in 3 weeks when we go to Calgary together. I'm like, I say this with love and respect. I say this with, I know why you think this. I get why you think this. I get why you were willing to go here.
Yeah.
It's because you're looking at this old architecture. You're looking at this country, your own country, that betrayed you for how many decades.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But things are different.
Yeah.
And yes, some of the players look the same. Yes, we're still dealing with Bibi freaking Netanyahu, okay? But who's this sinister man? But, you know, it sucks, but sometimes it's not a Hollywood ending.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, sometimes it's just Chinatown.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a really complicated outcome.
Yeah.
Sometimes good people get fucked. Bad people get paid, but on the whole, if we've all profit from this, this is Donald Trump's superpower. He has no problem cutting a deal in the best interest of everyone with bad people.
Yeah, and this is why it gets confusing for a lot of people to understand. We, just like Nietzsche said, this goes beyond good and evil, black and white. We need to sort of shift our focus and look at things in a very realistic perspective. We all have morals. We all have our ethics. Nobody likes war. I mean, even when I served, most of the things that we did was how to deter war, how to de-escalate, right? We're not, nobody's praising the killing of people, et cetera, but we have to understand that there are things that have moved a little bit too far and have to come back to the mean. And this is religious extremism. This is just organizations.
This is geopolitical extremism. This is extremism in defense of old colonial networks.
Yep.
This is like why I can sit here and say, I don't think Iran's the good guy, but I can still condemn Israel for what they did in Gaza. Yeah, it's not hard, folks. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and those who have just a problem accepting this, years ago, as a European, I'm Greek. I also see myself as a European. I was born here in Canada, so I have a dual, two countries
identity.
I was shocked and I was insulted that David Cameron back in the day said it's not in the UK's best interest to prescribe to label IRGC as a terrorist organization. And I'm like, what? That should say that's a sign in itself. It's blatant that the old empire has been consolidated in the city of London. It's still using proxies. And I'm sorry, if you're not naming the IRGC as a terrorist organization that is operating,
maybe you're funding them.
Exactly. So, and also the stable coins that we saw, some weird stable coins movement to the IRGC from the UK.
Of course.
One thing that this is breaking news. Greece is setting up an air defense system to protect Bulgaria. Right now, the foreign minister of Greece, I just got a message. The foreign minister of Greece has been in talks right now. We're setting up air defense systems that primarily the umbrella will cover Bulgaria.
I'm telling you, the whole Visegrad, that whole strip of Eastern Europe is getting primed to leave the EU. Marco Rubio came out this morning and said, I back Viktor Orban 100% in his war effectively in his war with Zelensky over oil and gas and electricity and everything else. Viktor Orban stopped short of. He's 5 weeks away from an election where they're literally trying to steal it from him. Steal it from him.
And the fact that he blocked again the 90 billion package for Ukraine, I salute the man. I mean, somewhere here I have a picture of.
I'm waiting for the Hungarian army to march on Kiev from the other side, like the Hungarians and the Poles, like for Donald Tusk to get like strung up by his toenails, and Rocky just to look at him and go, no, we're moving in and we're taking Lvov and we're taking Kiev. That's it. It's over. And Bulgaria, same thing. Romania, same thing.
And the Russians, they could have carpet bombed Kiev or what, and all the cities. But Kiev, and people who don't know, Kiev was the first city of the Rus.
I know.
Okay? So Kiev is seen as like what the Greeks see as Constantinople, being a jewel city, of the world, where it was our capital.
And so the Greeks have never attempted to invade Turkey and carpet bomb it with all of those airplanes to get it back, because why would you do that?
Yeah. So
and this is a Russian civil war, folks. This is not this is not a war in the same sense. It's a Slavic civil war.
Yeah.
And it's being stoked cynically, continually being stoked cynically by a bunch of horrible, boppy, fucking retarded, bad tooth, bad dental work British who we just need to like watch these limeys twist in the fucking wind and be strung up by their toenails and fed to dogs. That's what they deserve. Boris Johnson should be smacked in the fucking head. Publicly, repeatedly, with a wet dildo. After it's been pulled out of his ass. That's what we need to do. And we need to put it on pay-per-view and we'll balance the budgets.
I like that. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen, because Iran is just the beginning of bigger things. And one thing I'm only concerned is that people need to be aware of in Europe is, I know they're also called sleeper cells, but the fifth columnist that we sometimes refer to in the army, I do think that we might see some attacks in Europe as a response.
We absolutely will. We've already seen them in the United States. Trump attacked Iran last week, and there were no less than 3 massive shootings. A guy just walked into a bar in Texas and shot 30 people. Like really? Okay. That's just some random dude who got into a fight with his wife and went to the bar. Okay. With an AR-15. Really? Yeah. All right. Fine. Yeah. Pull that other leg. It plays Jingle Bells. No.
But I think that, Ukraine right now is going to be, I think that in a few months this war is going to end.
Trump has put a deadline on it.
He's right. Yeah. I think once Iran is finished, the IRGC is taking out, all these hardliners are taken out. Mm-hmm. I think then there's going to be serious focus in Ukraine to just shut it all down. Goodbye.
I'm hoping so. And I think the key for everybody is to watch the cognitive dissonance between what you're seeing and you're being told you're seeing in the capital markets. They're going to try and turn you into newly minted oil experts this weekend. They're going to try and turn you into currency experts this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me. They're going to try and turn you into bond yield experts this weekend. Watch it all with a weather eye. I'm watching the whole thing. I got my other monitor over here. I got my watch list up here. And if you looked at my watch list, folks, you'd be like, oh my God, is he a spurg? And I'm telling you, we're winning. And when you hear the Israelis turn around and say, this morning, commercial air traffic restarts on Sunday, that means Iran can't hurt them. It also means it can't hurt Saudi Arabia. They can't hurt Bahrain. They can't hurt you or anybody else.
Yeah.
Are there going to be aftershocks here? Yes. Yeah. Is every aftershock going to be amplified on Twitter? Yes. Yeah. So what? And by the way, they're gonna produced for, they're going to show you the same stupid video of the same F-15 getting shot down, and they're going to claim it's a new one every single day. This is done. It's over.
Yeah.
If it wasn't over, I would be honest and tell you that it was, oh no, we have a lot of problems here.
Yeah.
And everybody trying to read some eschatological end state. Oh my God, the red heifer's coming. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, please. That's all bullshit that was thrown in. This is all, we're going to finally dismantle the dispensationalists in the United States.
Yeah.
That still believe that the Scofield Bible is like real. We have a lot of work to do in the United States. One of the biggest ones is that we need to get Americans to start reading Bibles that weren't written by Jews.
Yeah,
it would be nice.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the evangelical church and the UK funding and a lot of the. But anyways,
I don't know anything about this stuff. I just know my instincts tell me that it's all bullshit. But I don't know anything. I don't know anything about it. I don't want to. I hate having to do any more work than I currently do, delving into the minds of these evil people. I really can't take it anymore. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think that people need to be very careful because religion always was an important component to immobilize people, to shake people's feelings. And I think people need to be careful when there are different prophecies discussed as, oh, that's why this is happening, because this has been said or that. And I think that, people just overall have to use critical thinking with whatever they see from now on, because like I said, it's a hybrid war. And when there's a hybrid warfare, when everybody's exposed to the internet, we're going to see and hear a lot of things. And yes, nobody wants to admit that the old world is fading. I mean, the monarchy has been pushed even in Greece. There's discussions of how the old monarchy, might come in and play part of politics, et cetera, et cetera. So we're seeing that the old world is still gasping for air. And I think that, yes, the U.S. does suffer with a lot of this religious extremism when it comes to some of these end time prophecies, and
But the best part about this is that as the generations change over here in the U.S., it's all coming way down, and that's why this is being pushed now. You can see the demographic shift happening in the United States. I joke look, Zoomers don't drink, right? They don't drink. They're all becoming Catholic, and they're all going back to church. They're not becoming Pentecostal. Yeah. Okay, that's the big one. And eventually we can fix the Catholic Church. I'm religious at this point, but I can tell you that I'm ex-Catholic, or at least recovering Catholic, because you're never really not Catholic. And then, but I can tell you, there's a reintegration of the church that's coming. That's a longer form story. It's not the story. I'm not here to tell that story. I'm here to moderate that story, because I don't know that story. That would be for me to sit down and be the host of, because I can't. I don't know. I don't know shit about that stuff, but I can see. But I know enough about it to know where it's going. Right.
Yeah. So. There are talks of this concept of ecumenism. It's a Greek word. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong here, but where you're seeing the merging of churches. There's been a discussion of that, of forming one Christian church, and Orthodox and Catholics sort of merging together, and all the other iterations, all the evangelicals and Protestants, Anglicans, we're seeing those churches are getting rid of, are getting they're empty, they're being emptied out even financially.
Yeah.
And we know that the UK, I mean, I've traced some of the funding of evangelical churches in North America straight to the UK. I mean, isn't it surprising that you have the Anglican Church and also you have a strong presence of the evangelical church in the UK? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't assume that. You think, why are evangelicals in the UK? But it's part of that controlled opposition, right? Because the evangelicals are the ones who are pushing a lot of the pro-Zionism prophecies, and then
so here's an interesting thing for you. It popped out to me like a sore thumb about 2 years ago. Somebody posted up a state-by-state map of the U.S. trade, and one of it was their by state exporters, right? Who they export to, right? Like, oh yeah, Texas exports here and Florida exports there, and everything makes sense. And then there's Utah, the home of the fucking Mormons, and where their biggest, who their biggest exporter is?
I don't have a single clue, Tom. I don't know.
The UK.
Surprise!
What are they exporting to the UK other than gold, silver, and tithes to the church?
Yeah.
And most probably really like real estate money and whatever the money laundering through the Church of Latter-day Saints, because the Mormonism, all that stuff, it's all a British plot. It's all dumb. It's literally dumb.
Yeah.
And anybody, I'm sorry, folks, go watch the Book of Mormon. Like it's good enough. Like if you need an understanding of how dumb. No offense to Mormons. If it works for you, it works for you. But sorry, I look at your religion, I'm like, that's dumb. But I see the same thing in Islam. Like I can't. I look at Islam and I look at this stuff and I go, this is proof positive that human beings can find good in anything, including some of the dumbest shit that I've ever seen in my life. I see people take comfort reading Twilight. I can see people take. I'm going to get a fatwa against me when I say this one. I can see people finding comfort reading the Quran. Because it's just like exiles all the shit about, hey, let's go to war and kill all the infidels, and just read the few passages here and there that are beautiful and about peace, right? And then just ignore everything else. Like, okay. It tells me that our default position as human beings is that we would rather build communities than bomb them. We'd rather make babies than eat them. Like that's where we are as a species. And all this other shit is just, some crap someone made up because they want to, pull a vig off of your labor.
Yeah.
Because what else is new? What? Being a shitbag is not an ethnicity. How many times do I have to say it? Being a shitbag isn't a religious text. It's either, by the way. And I'm sorry, having a religion doesn't shield you from being a shitbag, no matter what your ethnicity. How about that one?
Yeah. And that's why a lot of these theocratic systems that we're seeing that they're dying off. Behind them was terrorism.
Yeah.
And behind
money
them,
laundering, child trafficking,
all the terrible
babies blood drinking, like satanic rituals, all 9 yards.
And it goes back to the Crusaders, like you said, because the Crusaders were caught. The equivalent of the Epstein file started with the Crusaders. That's a different.
That'll be a different discussion for
story.
We
What
might
has
have to
been
have
found
that
in the
discussion.
French-British castles, what has been found and covered up. But anyways,
how about we have that conversation offline so that YouTube doesn't so that somebody doesn't kill us both.
Well, I enjoyed this podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed this. I hope people were taking notes because we have just tried to uncover. Just
people don't take notes anymore.
They
just have AI. They just have AI summarize it for them. Have AI listen to it and say take notes.
AI scraping. Well, I hope people enjoyed our podcast. Feel free to subscribe, like, and comment. We want to hear from you. Tom, where can we find more of your work?
As always, you can follow me, Breathe and Fire, TFL1728 on Twitter on a daily basis. I refuse to call it X because that just sounds dumb. And Patreon/Cult Goats and Guns, where we do the work behind the that's how we make our money. So that we can breathe fire without anybody standing over our shoulder.
Beautiful.
Which is what we do.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you come by again, Tom. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
Oh, absolutely. This was a blast.
Awesome.